work, isn't it? Okay, welcome to the workshop, folks. I got a new project going on here. This started life as a Zenith cabinet and is now being turned into a Princeton Reverb, pretty much. It's got I got some legs, set of legs that I will put it up off the floor on. This cabinet, actually, this used to be vertical. This used to be the base of the cabinet, but I've turned it on its side. I've got a really nice baffle, old Alnico speaker. I'm not sure if I'll keep that. I've had a habit of using Weber Alnicos. They're expensive, but they sound great. Got a nice grill cloth there, so that will go on the front of here. And this chassis, this amp chassis, is out of a Thermo sound projector, and that's a 6v6 chassis. I've had to strip it out, of course, completely redesigning it. We've got the 5x3, a couple of 6v6 pots. That'll drive the power section. I've got a schematic here. This is the typical Princeton Reverb amp minus the tremolo. So I may use this tremolo, but the thing about this tremolo is it calls for, I might put a 1-tube tremolo. This is 1.5 tubes. So I'm trying to decide what to put in here. I've probably got room to put in the 1.5 tube tremolo, but then that wastes half a tube. So we'll see how it goes. There are other options. I've been on my favorite forum, which is el34world.com. Best forum on the planet. You learn a hell of a lot on there. And I found some schematics. There are some options. Here's a single reverb, a single tube reverb. I might go for that. This has been put in what looks like a Tweed, possibly a modified 5e3. So that's an option as well. It may look like I'm just getting started here, but in fact I've already put an incredible amount of work into this little system. And you know, for everything from machining this little panel here so that this will sit nicely, trying to figure out how I'm going to mount my tube sockets. Of course, I've added some extra pots here. This won't be microphone. This will be a reverb pot. This will be bass. This will be treble. This will be volume. And of course we have the guitar input here. So I'm still contemplating exactly how I'm going to lay things out in here. Plus the power transformer that came with this is out of the Thermo sound, and it seems quite a small hunk of iron really to be running what I want it to run, but they had 3 6v6s in here. They had, as well as the 5x3, and as well as 1, 2, 3, 4. They had 4 tubes and other tubes, plus on here was the output transformer. The winding ratio of the output transformer was no good for me. It was a very odd winding. It was like about a 16:1 ratio, and that's not going to fit with a pair of 6v6 push-pull going into an 8-ohm speaker, which is what I want to do. So I've got to find room on this chassis to mount the output transformer, and I also have to find room to mount a reverb transformer, which is this little thing here. And of course the tank will sit down in the bottom here nicely. I hope I have some old tanks down here that have come out of various items, and it's only a 2-spring version, but I have 2 or 3 of these kind of things, so I'll see which one fits best and how that's going to work in this Princeton. Okay, let's get to work. The veneer on the top of this cabinet is okay. I would actually keep it, except that and the reason it's okay is because that was the side of the old cabinet, but when you look on the surface of the cabinet, which is this was the top, you see that it's not really even a veneer. It's just like it's almost like painted on. I don't know how they got this stuff on here, but it's wafer thin, and it's going to be pretty hard to refinish that side. So I'm going to go look at veneers, and I might veneer the whole thing just to make it look nice, patch up this corner a little bit, and really make it look as good as I can make it. For the power input on the amp, I put in a 3-pin socket here, female, and actually I think that's male. I get my sexes confused. But I kind of like doing this. It's a bit more of a hassle to make the square hole, but it means that when I'm working on the amp, I don't have to be tripping over that power cord that's hanging out of there all the time. And generally in these projects that I build, well, when we go over and look at this one, it has a fixed power cord. And I must have had this amp out of this unit 20 times, in and out, trying to problem solve. I had a bit of an overheating problem, put a nice little fan in here to keep it cool. So when it comes to tripping over those power cords, you know, you tend to work late into the night in these projects. You kind of keep going past your safety zone sometimes, and you trip over things. So I like not having a power cord sticking out of here. Maybe that's just me, and it's just more convenient when I'm working on the amp, really. I'd like to give a quick shout out to the guitarologist, Brad, the guitarologist. This is just a fantastic little, he's got a video where you get this little box, connect it up. It's a very easy process. He walks you through it, and it just makes this thing so much better to use, because you can see exactly what your draw is, you can see exactly what's going on with voltages, and otherwise you're relying on this, and that's not really, how do you read the difference between 200 volts and 210 volts on that? I'm not really sure, but on here it's perfectly clear. So thank you, Brad. I've had a change of heart considering what to put in here. I was going to put in a Princeton reverb without the tremolo, but I decided to go with a 1-tube reverb, and that's going to give me a little bit more room in the chassis. Princeton, of course, has 1.5, has a more complicated tone stack, and I like this tone stack. You know, it works fine, but you have to be careful with the way you insert this into the chain here. We've got a gain stage here and then a PI, so we've got a lot going on in a Princeton. And if I had a larger chassis, I would be quite happy to do it. But I have decided to go with these stripes. Those stripes are from my LEDs. So, looking at this schematic, this is a Fender Tweed. Well, it's a modified Fender Tweed. I'm not going to put 2 channels in. I'm going to leave that channel out. I'm just going to have the 1 channel coming in, simple tone stack, a one pot tone stack. There's the recovery from the tone. We insert our reverb here and here before going into the PI. And it's a very simple 1-tube reverb. So what this is going to do is it's going to leave me with a little bit more space. If right now I've put in a volume, a treble, and a bass. If I get rid of one of those, I can put in a 3-way switch, because I'm only going to need 1 tone pot for this 5E3 schematic. And they can be made to work pretty good. I've got a 5E3 here that I've modded in the past, and I put in a 3-way switch in here on the cathode right before the PI. I'm going to have a switch on here so that I can have that mod, a 3-way switch on the front of this instead of one of those tone pots. And I think that is going to be better for the amp because it'll make it more versatile. I mean, it really makes it versatile. I highly recommend that mod. Plus, of course, well, this particular schematic has the 0.1 here. I'll probably trade that to a 0.475 or sorry, a 0.0475 or a 0.05. And here we just have the 0.022. And that gets rid of some of the bass that sort of gets woofly at the bottom end when you get into distortion, which is what people complain about with the Tweed. And I found that with this particular amp I have here, which was a Mojotone kit build. The mods really help clean up the sound, and it's as sweet as can be now. So I'm going to go with something like this. HoffmanAmps.com EL34 World is a good place to go for this kind of thing. And I'm using a Filmosound power transformer, which this little power transformer here is putting out 397 a side, unloaded. So when it's loaded, I'm hoping it'll be down nearer, 360 is what I'm guessing it'll be, and even that is more than I actually want. So I might put a 200 ohm resistor on the center tap of the plates coming out of here, and but I'll have to see once it's all wired up and loaded up how things are going to go. Now, having this will also allow me to not have to worry about having one more tube. I'm only going to have the one for the preamp stage, one for the reverb here, and here's the PI. So I'm going to have half a tube left over. And I might just simply turn this into a parallel tube. I could also do it here for better noise control, give me a little more gain, a smidgen more gain, but then I'm going to have this one coupled to that there, and I don't like that idea. So I think I would probably just parallel the 12AX7 here, but I'm going to use the 12AY7 actually for the preamp because it works really so nicely in the 5E3 that I've already built. And it'll, it means that I can choose, it's not that there's not a lot of room in here, there's plenty of space to do stuff, but because it was used in a different amplifier with a different configuration, I'm going to have to take these out and replace them with better sockets. But we've got so many holes drilled in here from what the layout was that, when you start trying to reconfigure it, it sort of messes with your head when you're trying to figure out how to lay it out, because you kind of want to make it work how it is there, but sometimes it just won't. And if you want to build a good amp out of this, you've got to just sort of start over. And so I will have to think about that. But so having fewer tubes in here and putting fewer tubes in just makes it easier because I'm already dealing with sort of logistical headaches. Plus, in terms of a 5E3, I've built a 5E3 before, and I've built a Princeton. And, they're comparably fantastic amps. You can't take much away from either of them, so it's not like I'm going to be losing out. I also managed to get a nice finish on this cabinet, much nicer than I thought. So in the end, I sanded off what seemed to be like a decal veneer on the top and sides of this cabinet. It came off pretty easily, and after a lot of finagling with different stains, I managed to get a nice stain on it, and we'll see how it looks. That's not going to be the finished product. I'll also finish it with an oil and bring up a polish on it, but I'm very happy with the way this is coming together. Where ultimately I would like to have my tubes is places like right there. Maybe one there, and probably one about here somewhere. Maybe that socket would work, but I can't quite get that to happen the way it is. So that's just one of the disadvantages of trying to use a chassis that's been designed for other purposes. And voila, I have an aluminum plate now. It's bolted on place here, but now it's temporarily bolted in. I can put my tubes where I want. I'm not going to put the rest of the bolts in at the moment because, as you can see, they make perfect places for bolting terminals on when I need them later on. So we will see how that works out, but this is good so far. A quick tip: when you're drilling holes for large holes for valve sockets, tube sockets, anything like that, I use first I drill a pilot hole and then use a Christmas tree. But But the tip is this: drill your big hole first. Don't drill the small holes first, because sometimes when you're drilling that big hole, the bit will move in ways that you don't expect. So it's better to drill the big hole first, then locate where you want your small holes to be. All of this kind of fabrication work is really a pain in the ass to do. It's tedious and very time consuming. But when it comes time to actually connect things up on the inside, everything will be where I want it, and that means a much better amplifier. It means less hum, better lead dressing, and so I'm happy that I relocated those sockets. Plus, I should add that I'm going to have to be very careful with lead dress. I've put in terminals here. I might put some against the back wall as well. Might put a dropping resistor over here on the center tap, so it acts as a bit of a heat sink. I'm going to have to run these wide here, so I'm adding cable so that I can loop them back in here, bring them round to the plates on the 5x3. So lead dress is really important at this part of the build. I kind of got lucky. I managed to get in the power input here and the fuse in the right place. I've had a lot of room to move over this side as well, putting in the switch, and I'm going to have the LED on this side. But then I'm running into preamp tubes and signal, and these things should really never meet if you can avoid it. So I'm trying to keep all the heavy duty stuff down this end and trying to not edge up into this territory here by using some of this space over here too much. And then if I do that, if this gets too close to this, then we end up with hum. So that's to be avoided at all costs, because once it's in there, it's pretty hard to start rewiring everything. I'm at that point with this project that is probably the most rewarding phase. The cabinet's shaping up quite nicely. I might add those handles to the side. And the amplifier itself is starting to come together. You know, it takes so much consideration and thoughtful planning if you're going to get things right, and quite often, if you miss one step, you pay for it later on. And I'm trying to fit an amplifier, push-pull amplifier with a reverb into a pretty small little box. I managed to squeeze in 4 22 UF power caps down in this end. So we've got all our power section down here, and now I've got a lot of room to move for whatever I want to do, whatever mods I want to do for the preamp section here. So it's just very rewarding to have done a lot of the major problem solving, and the amp itself is starting to take shape finally. One problem I know I'm going to have when I get this up and running is that I've got 397 volts a side coming off this transformer here, and that is a lot. So I've put in a dropping resistor. That thing's going to get hot. It may not drop. I'm putting it in on the center tap of the power transformer. I could also put one in here, but I'm going to try this first and see how hot that gets. If it gets too hot, I'm going to have problems, and I'm going to have to rethink that. But the main problem with this amp is that this is going to be kicking out a lot of voltage, which means my B plus coming off the rectifier is going to be really high. So I'm going to have to find a way of absorbing all of that with our dropping capacitors here. For now, I've just put in the standard dropping capacitor, the dropping resistors. I may have to increase them. These were, the schematic called for 16 UF. I had some 22s lying around, and I thought, well, with this extra high voltage, maybe this is a good thing to have them in there. Everything else is going smoothly. So here we have one dropping capacitor, here we have another, we have a couple more tucked down in there. It's a very tight build, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. One of the reasons it's so rewarding at this point is it's because none of the major problems have appeared yet. Once I fire it up and see how it sounds, then all sorts of things might have gone wrong, or I might have missed some step in the build. But after you've done a bunch of these, you can predict what things are likely to cause you problems. And usually the most common issue that I've always come across is just routing the AC lines too close to the preamp and that kind of thing. So one of the successes of this build at this point is that my preamps are clear and free of pretty much anything else at the moment. I've got it all packed in down here. Now that's going to become a problem if the heat build up here is too much, but we'll take one thing at a time. Worst case scenario is that I will have to trade out this power transformer for something that only puts out maybe 300 aside instead of 397 is just really up there. So we'll see. Something I have learned to do over the builds that I've created is that you're never really sure. They're all one-off, these. You're designing them as you go, you're modifying as you go. You might start out with a schematic, but that schematic will be modified in all sorts of ways by the time you're finished. And so what that means is you're never quite sure how your grounding system is going to work out. And it used to be that I would not use an isolating washer here on the speaker jack, and I would not use one over here on the input jack. I would sort of take my chances, and what I've learned is that that's not a good way to go about it. You've got to be able to control the ground lines, the ground return lines. So by isolating this, I can make this a collection point for grounding, some of my grounding. I can bring all my grounds to here, and then from here I can run them over to my primary ground pin here. And that will give me a lot less problems later on. You've got to think in terms of how you're going to be grounding everything. This, a lot of the grounding that's really important happens with the power section, with our power filter caps here. And so I've got a slightly kind of convoluted grounding system. You can see this yellow cable running down here to my grounding pin there. And I've had to do the same on this side. So where you see those yellow cables, those yellow wires, that's part of the grounding. So I've created a star ground, essentially, is what I prefer to do. If you don't think in terms of clean grounding lines, you will end up, there's no question, you will end up problem solving for ground loops later on. So I've learned that it's better just to sort of build that in, and part of that does mean, for a little bit more money, buy a bunch of these isolating washers, and you will be very pleased you did. Things are shaping up pretty well with the Zen Master. It's made from a Zenith, so I'm going to call it the Zen Master, this one. I've managed to squeeze a lot into this box. Pilot light, on, off, reverb. I have a dual concentric 1 megs. I got these from a place called Thompson Guitar and Thrift. They're hard to find, but we've got 2 pots here, both 1 meg concentric. So we've got 2 separate controls. One is a dwell, which is going into really just the input to the reverb system, and one is the return. So that's good. So it's pretty tight in here, and the one thing that I will always worry about when you do one of these hand wire jobs where everything is jammed in like this is making sure that the grounding system is star ground, because nothing else will work when everything's this tight. I don't know how they did it in the old days. They just put everything straight to chassis. Who knows what was going on, but I prefer to star ground everything. So I have my reverb ground coming over to here, which is meeting these grounds here coming over. It's not exactly a star ground, but I make sure it's all downstream. The big stuff's downstream, the heavy hitters are downstream, and I'm waiting for a reverb transformer. They are very hard to find at the moment. There's been a shortage, I guess, and so I might not, I'm waiting. It's going to be a couple more weeks, maybe 3 weeks before it turns up. And when that is in, I will run the ground from that. I will run all straight down to here, because I found that usually solves a lot of hum problems. And there is so much going on in here. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm pretty pleased with this build so far. Time will tell. I should mention that I have also managed to squeeze in a little cathode switch here, which is on, off, on. And in the off position, in the off position I have a 1.5 going to ground always. I switch it one way, I'll include a 25 UF bypass. Switch it the other way, I'll put in a negative feedback with a 56K. This works beautifully. My favorite setting usually, the last 5E3 that I did this to, just the 1.5K is really a good tone. The 25 UF cap gives so much gain that it gets a bit hard to handle. And then the negative feedback, having that in is a little bit like for little old ladies playing on Sunday, I think. But that's just me. Well, my reverb transformer finally showed up, 1750A Hammond, as per the typical Fender. Oopsie daisy, sorry. We've got 8 ohms going into the reverb tank here. And I've got all this wiring in place now. I have to say there's a lot going on in here, pretty tight space. But you know, it's all in there. This hand wiring is, you develop an sort of, there's an art to it, but you never know how it's going to come out. You can't keep things as well separated as if there's a board in there. And I don't know that I could have reused this chassis and found a board or designed a board. Hand wiring is an art unto itself, this point-to-point wiring. It may have been more sensible to design a board, but when you're working within a chassis that's already pre-configured for other purposes, you usually have to make a much smaller board than you'd like to fit it in and that kind of thing. So it becomes a headache all of its own. So I like the point-to-point wiring process. But as you can see, there's a tangle of wires in here. It's actually not as bad as it looks, because I'll tell you what I have done is I've created a very careful grounding scheme. I have isolated my jacks. Everything is isolated. Here, this is an isolating washer. So I've got one ground for my circuit, and that's back here. And everything is routed through there. I have one concern with the transformer for the reverb, which I've grounded. I've connected to this ground here, which is also grounding these. These are isolated from the chassis. I've got ground here. So I've got a flow of my grounding that comes all the way through this white wire back here. And it may be that I have to lift this. If I'm getting hum in the reverb, I might have to lift this ground, take it out of the rest of the grounding schematic, and bring it straight down here, extend the cable down, and that has helped me in the past when doing a reverb build. So it's not quite as messy as it looks. I've put some shielded wires in here where I thought that was needed. So I've got the heater wiring in, and I gave it a lot of space here. You can see I gave it a lot of ceiling, and I guess it's a bit of a trade-off. I don't want the AC on the heater wires interfering with my signal. I might have put these sockets here too close to this side of the amplifier chassis. I should have probably moved them back a bit, but whether the AC that's going through here will create enough noise in my signal chain, I won't know until I fire this up. But in hindsight, I had a bit more room over here, so I could have moved these back a bit. But you know, hindsight's 20/20. You never really know until you get there what's actually going to happen. So I keep them really high to give them a lot of room from everything, keep them a long way away from everything. That means that I've got maybe more wire here than I need coming up and down. I could make them a little bit lower, but you know, who knows? Who knows? It's all a bit of a trade-off, and I just think give them a good clearance, and let's hope that they don't interfere with anything too much. Well, the reverb tank has not arrived yet, but I decided to go ahead and give the Zen Master the old smoke test. We've got a bit of buzz going on. Don't know if you can hear that. It's largely coming from the guitar and the overheads and all that. So there's some shielding issues on this bench that are not good. But I'm pretty happy with the way it's sounding. So I've got about 13 watts of plate dissipation on both 6v6s, which is a little higher than I wanted. I mean, you know, put the 14 is the max. I like to keep it around 12 and keep it safe. But I'm having trouble getting it lower than about 13 watts because I've got a lot of voltage coming in here, a lot of juice. And so I can increase my cathode resistor to change the bias on the 6v6 power tubes. But of course, the larger I go with my cathode bias resistor, it pushes the voltages up higher. And plate voltage I've got right now is around 390, pushing 400, somewhere in there. And I know that 6v6s can go higher. So I don't know if that's an issue. I think I'd like to keep them below 400 if I can. I've got a dropping resistor here, and that's putting out a little bit of heat. It's a 10 watter. I might need a 20 watter in here, or a 15 watt or something a little bit more robust. But it seems to be functioning quite well here. I do think I'm going to have a bit of a problem with my heater wires affecting my tone pots and volume. You can hear this. That's my tone pot being turned up, and that sounds like AC cycling through there, and I'm not thrilled about that. But however, so far so good. There's always a bit of tweaking has to go on once things are up and running. I should point out too that this is coming through ye old crappy workshop speaker, so if it's sounding this okay, to my ear it's sounding pretty good. So if it's sounding okay through this speaker, it means I'm on the right track, and when I team it up with a nice 12-inch speaker, I will be golden. While I noodle away here, and I'm waiting to see, I'm really waiting to see how hot this resistor is going to get. I can feel a little bit of heat coming off it, but it's actually not too bad. I've also got the faceplate on the amp now. So I'm really pleased with the way that turned out. I don't know what kind of knobs I'll put on here. Probably the old chicken head knobs. That'll do it. It's been about 10 minutes now since I fired this up, and what I'm keeping in mind is the fact that this will be in an enclosed space. I left a bit of air gap in the way I'm mounting this, so so when this is in the cabinet, it will be more enclosed. There will be plenty of air circulation, but I've got to keep that in mind, the fact that this is always going to be on like a little heater in here, and there has to be good air circulation. So I've left a gap of about 1/8 of an inch. I put some mounting blocks. When this screws into the amp, there'll be some mounting blocks here that keep it down off the ceiling of the amp so that airflow can come through. And what I've done sometimes also is if the amp just persists in running hot, I'll install a 12-volt computer fan in the back of the cabinet, and they make very little noise, so they can be a really good fix for this kind of thing. But I've been sitting here for 10-15 minutes now, and this is getting warm, but it's nothing, I couldn't fry an egg on it, and there's no smoke coming out of it, so this is looking better all the time. My temperature is giving me about, my little thermometer here is giving me about 160, slowly going up there. It's giving me about 160 degrees on this, that's Fahrenheit, on this resistor. And, this, I've seen much worse. I still might put in a larger resistor, just so that it's going to handle that heat over time better, and so that there's more surface area for it to release the heat. And I don't want this resistor to cause problems and burn out at any time in the future. As a final thought on that resistor here, it may be at 160 degrees here, but once it's in the cabinet, it could easily go up to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It can get hot inside those things, and I don't want it baking the woodwork or anything like that of the cabinet. So I will try and find a solution to that. I wasn't happy with this dropping resistor. I had it right here, coming off the power transformer, and I wanted to drop that 397 volts per side. But I don't like the heat that it's putting out, and I could put a larger capacity, like a 15 watt, 20 watt in here. But I put a jumper across it to see what it would do to my plate voltage, and it added about 15 or 20 volts to the plates. They're now at about 410. But I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to take this resistor out because the plates may run a little bit hotter in my tubes, but that'll all be heat that's on the outside of the amp, not on the inside. Not on the inside, because these things really start to cook when they're closed in a cabinet. So I'm just going to take this out, and I'm going to remove that 200 ohm resistor and just run it to ground as per normal. If I want to drop the voltage, I guess in my nodes, I could put a resistor in here. I could do that kind of thing, but I'm pretty happy with the way the rest of the amp is shaping up. I've got nice voltages on everything else, so I'm not worried about 410 volts on the 6v6 plates. So this has got to go. Well, I changed my mind again. I do have a 20 watt 200 ohm resistor, and while it looks like it's in the same place, it's actually doing a different job. I found that the resistor I had in here it raised the noise floor way too high. I'm not exactly sure why, but it was bringing a lot of noise into this amp. So I've moved it over here onto the B+, and that drops the voltage on the plates of the 6v6 from about 410 down to about 380. I had to do something, because if I left it at 410, I just couldn't get a handle on the bias. It was up at about 15 or 16 per tube, 16 watts, and that's just too high. I just couldn't wrangle it in. And this is what I was worried about initially when I saw how much this Thermosound power transformer was putting out per side. So that's how it's going to be here. It all gets kind of warm in here. The 20 watt doesn't get quite as hot as the 10 watt did. And I'm getting quite a bit of heat off my cathode, my power tube cathodes as well, cathode resistors as well. So I just want to make sure that everything in here is going to be good for a long time, so it's better to have overkill, put a 20 watt in, plus 10 watts on my cathode resistors. So that's what this is gonna be. It's set now. I am very happy that it's all actually, it took me a few hours to sort this out, but it's actually gone a lot more smoothly than some of my builds. Earlier builds used to take weeks, but this one just took an afternoon to get these details dialed in. So from here on in, I will. I'm just waiting for the reverb tank to come in, and I'll install that in the cabinet and take it from there. The reverb tank has been installed. That turned up, and I installed that, and I just love the Weber Alnico Classics. This is a 12A125A. I actually ordered a 12A125S for this, and it was a bit dark. I really wasn't thrilled with it, and so I contacted Weber. They were very nice. They just had sent it on back. So I did. And I'm still waiting to see if the refund will come through, but I feel confident it will. The only downside to it is that it cost, I went to the UPS store to ship a speaker like that, because you have a box inside a box, but it's not that heavy. Anyway, it cost me $75, I think, to ship the thing back. So, a cautionary tale. So, what else is going on here? We've got the tone and volume. We've got, basically, this is, clean is going to be a negative feedback. With gain, it'll probably just be the one, in fact it is the 1.5K resistor on the cathode. More gain gives me a cathode bypass cap on the cathode in the preamp. So a lot of options there, tone-wise. I've got, and so here we have the dual concentric pot for the reverb. So we've got the outer is the send to the reverb tank, the inner is the return, and this is when you want noise, you turn it on, and when you don't, you turn it off. Something I did find, if you remember, I was putting a big dropping resistor in here, and there was a lot of heat because the voltage was high coming off that power transformer. And I was worried about it, and it's quite crowded in here. We've got a couple of 6V6s, and actually one of these, but they're up close to the rectifier here, so the heat was really accumulating. Despite all these holes and ventilation in here, just too much heat for me to feel comfortable. So I did a trick that I've done a bunch of other times. Get a high-speed computer fan. This brand is Be Quiet. Be Quiet. That's upside down. I don't even know if you can see that in there. There it is. Be Quiet. And that is running off one of these little AC/DC 5-volt switching transformers. They are cheap. I get them for about $5 off Banggood. And that has come straight off the 120 inside the amp and is running that fan. The fan is designed to run on 12 volts at 2200 RPM, and these fans are very quiet and they're really efficient. Now, because I'm only running it with a 5-volt switching transformer, it's only supplying 5 volts, the fan runs at a bit less than half speed. So instead of 2200 RPM, I'm getting probably about 1000. But that still puts out a very nice cool breeze running through there, and it just makes me feel very happy that this amp is not going to overheat or have any kind of a nasty meltdown. And that's just a good feeling to have, especially when you put so much effort into a build. You don't want it, you don't want it to be having nasty mishaps. Okay, so let's see how this thing sounds. Let's stand it upright and see what we actually have got. There's a mockingbird right outside the workshop here. Don't know if you can hear it. Of course, now he shuts up. He hasn't shut up for weeks. There he goes. that's on clean with the negative feedback loop in. Here we take the negative feedback loop out. I do find that with tube amps, after about 20 minutes, they really start to sing. This has just been turned on, so you know that's my excuse if it doesn't sound magnificent, but I'm very pleased with it. Here we go to adding a bypass cap on the preamp stage. Let's see what kind of crunch we can get out of it. Let's turn it around, see how it sounds from the other side. The guitar is something I put together, parts caster. Can't say enough good things about Klein pickups. Klein. Find them online. all, folks.